How's it going? Trying something a little different tonight. Um, I've got the actually something's kind of frozen, I think here. Anyway, hopefully it's live. So what I'm trying different is I'm just doing the same show as before in terms of assembling this model while chatting, but what I'm doing different is I picked a theme for the chat. So in previous episodes, while I was doing the stream Cabriolet, I was picking this random like knowledge pack. But today I picked a theme, and instead of putting the Dream Cabriolet in the title, which I'll update it to that tomorrow, but just while we're live, the title says post questions and comments about Old World, Mud Flood, Tartaria, Inheritors, Reboot. These are all just kind of hashtags that mean this thing, which if people join and start posting in the chat, then we'll have a conversation about this thing. If not, then maybe I'll just make a few comments while I'm building the puzzle. So I don't really know a lot about it, and I'm certainly not endorsing it at this point. I think the first video I saw on it was World's Fair. Someone was like looking at these World's Fair videos or these World Fair pictures from like 150 years ago, and they were saying like who was building all these buildings for the World's Fair and where did they go, and who were all these people like walking around the World's Fair in these like derby hats and stuff and straw hats and these ladies with umbrellas and ruffles, and what was this all about? And it could have just been the fashion of the time. And, people made comments like they said that the buildings were temporary, made of wood, but some of the buildings are still around and they're not made of wood. So maybe some of the buildings were temporary and some of them were not. Or what I kind of thought is this like an old version of Photoshop? Like, were they just making these events seem more crowded than they really were, making the architecture seem more than it really was? By the way, let's focus on the puzzle for a minute. This thing is in worse shape than it was previously. Like at this point, I don't even think I could put those pins in there. I'm gonna stop trying. All right, so yesterday we were working on this tires, and we didn't get finished, so I just like stuffed them in the interior here, since we didn't build the interior yet. But I think I'm not... There should be one more of this piece. I don't know if it's like rattling around in there. Yeah, there it is. It just landed in my hand. All right, so there it is. So this front side, on this side, it's also not connected, but at least it looks good. On this side, it's far from connected and it looks bad. I was spending like 10 minutes before I clicked go live trying to push that in, and it didn't go in, so I don't know. I don't think I'm even going to worry about it at this point. It'll eventually come up in the build, and at that point we'll take a closer look at it. So speaking of which, 54, is that where we left off, or is that where we're going to start today? I think that's where we left off. I think we ended at 53. We built these two things and these two things, and then that's where we stopped on 53. So we're going to go to 54 right now. That's where we're going to start. So 54 is going to use boards 5 and 7. Are those the top two here? Let's see. 5 and 7. All right, there's 7. There's 5. Yeah, we're good to go here. 5 and 7. All right. The first thing we got to do is cut a bunch of toothpicks. 4 twosies and 4 threesies. So that's 8 pieces, and all we're doing is cutting toothpicks. So we have time to talk about Tartaria again. Please post in comments like whatever you have to say about that Tartaria, because if you don't, I don't know that much. So, all right, I'll try to tell you some more. So some of the hashtags there, I wrote mud flood. So, oh, that's the other thing. And this is anytime there's like a new like alternative history theory / conspiracy theory on YouTube or Rumble or wherever, there's something you have to remember is that a lot of people are going to pretend they know what they're talking about when they don't. So if you go on the alternative forums, you'll be ahead of the mainstream, but you have to be careful because, you know, let's say there's going to be 1,000 theories and only one of them's going to be right. Or they're going to sort of evolve their way to correct over time. So, like someone will say, oh, there's buried buildings. Like I was watching one of those videos today, and they were like, in Kansas City, there's a bunch of mounds, and if you dig into these mounds, there's buildings in them. And in Seattle, if you go under the existing city, there's like another city. And there's buildings that have several layers underground, and this, you know, is a theory that there was like some sort of mud flood and some buildings got buried. But then someone else will take that and they'll say, oh, they weren't your buildings, they were Tartar's buildings. And then someone else will say, oh, Tartar wasn't Tartar, it was Mongols. And then someone else will say, the Mongols weren't Mongols, they were like Romans or something. You know, they'll have a lot of different like theories. So you kind of have to stick to the facts and make your own theories. And your own theories might match parts of other people's theories, but I mean, really, you got to focus on facts for the first few years. And, you know, eventually a picture is going to evolve. And maybe some people already know. Like, I think there's one of the sort of overarching conspiracy theories, or, you know, not even conspiracy theory, because it's like public knowledge that Smithsonian's got a lot of stuff that they don't show us. So, like, you know, I think one example is they have some 40-foot squid. Like, I don't know where they have it, but the Smithsonian's got a 40-foot squid that they don't display. So that's like a fact. That's not disputed by anyone. The Smithsonian isn't claiming that they don't have a squid. They admit to having a squid. But then there's a lot of stuff that they might not talk about. So, like, someone will say they have bones of giants at the Smithsonian that aren't on display. And I don't know, you know, I don't know the details on that. I don't know how, you know, the veracity of that. But, you know, people will say it. But then someone else will say, oh, and then these old buildings, they have tall arches, so they were built by giants. So that's like, you know, that's a wild speculation, because first of all, you're saying that there were giants, which nobody's like confirmed. And then second, now you're crediting giants with building these buildings. So you have to be careful with these theories. I mean, sometimes the craziness of the theory, you know, can actually bring in people to like think about it in the first place. I mean, that's like how all Hollywood movies are made. They're sort of like someone has a crazy idea, you know, and it becomes someone else's script. So it's not bad that people say these things, but they're not true either. So that's sort of a word of caution about this whole discussion. So the first, hashtag that I just dealt with is mud flood, which is this idea that there's like buried buildings and why are they buried and how did they get buried, and it's because there was apparently some mud flood. I'm not saying there was, but that's the theory. All right, there's our 8 toothpicks. And then the next one is Old World, which I'm not sure where this hashtag came from. It might be just some guy who's trying to sell his videos and he just like came up with that. But I had a couple of links. Let me see if I could find one of these. All right. I have it on a different computer, but let me see if I can bring it up on the screen. So, okay, something called Never Was Lost Empire of Tartaria. Let me search that right now. Never was, no, I didn't write that correct. Never was Lost Empire of Tartaria. Let's see if this comes up. So I have this on another screen if it comes up. And it just has cool pictures, but the pictures aren't claiming to be true. All right. The pictures aren't. Okay, here's the pictures. So these pictures aren't real. They're fake pictures. But they give you the idea. I mean, I think this is, I don't know, the Capitol maybe, and this is like St. Basil's, and this is some other building. And what they're showing you here is like you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg and the rest of it is buried. All those 3 are fake. They're just meant to like give you the idea. But then there's other ones that are real. And this is what we were talking about before with the World's Fair. It's like, so where did all these buildings go? And down here is exactly those World's Fair. So they have these pictures from these World's Fairs, but I mean, what are these pictures of? Like nobody seems to be able to. I mean, they say it was some wooden things that they made, and then they just got rid of them when the World's Fair was over. Well, who does that? I mean, who like builds a bunch of structures and then like tears them down? So I don't know what that's all about. All right. The next thing we have to do here is we need piece 370, 369, and this piece that we already built. So 2 toothpicks of the largest size, the 3Z, a 370 piece, and 369. All right. 369 is like a tire, but it's not on this board. Must be on this board, right? Okay, interesting. Yeah, there's the 369 right there. And the 370 is right here. All right, so let's make one of these. And then we can continue talking about that Tartaria. All right, so Tartaria, that's the next hashtag. So that's this idea that there was another country. And I haven't really looked into it, but people claim that not only was there another country, but that other country had a flag, and you could look it up in old encyclopedias. Like there are old books that have it. So theoretically, you could go to these old books, and you'll see references to this place that doesn't seem to exist anymore, but they had like a flag. I don't know if what I'm saying is true or not, because like I'm saying that this stuff used to be in encyclopedias, but it's not anymore. But it also seems to me just as likely that some troll made up some BS and put it on like 4chan. Like that, like, which is more difficult? Like an institution scrubbing a bunch of stuff from textbooks, or like printing new textbooks and leaving out that information, or someone on 4chan or Reddit creating a bunch of fake documents and claiming that, oh, look, all these old maps showed this to Tara, but now they don't. There's such a thing as steak tartare. I think there's a type of clothing that's attributed to Tartars. So there is some sort of Tartars. I don't know if they have anything to do with, earthen mounds in Kansas City. I mean, I don't know why they would. But maybe they have something to do with something. But regardless of whether this is accurate or not, or even on track or not, people have taken this hashtag and run with it. So if you search on this, you'll find these these pictures and things like that. I've got a problem here. This piece is clearly 370, right? So I'm holding 370, and it has two circles and a square. Oh, never mind. I was going to say, if you look at the instructions, there's also a dot, but that dot is really a label. So actually, there's no problem. All right, so the 370 with the two toothpicks is going to go in the back of the 369 with the Roman numeral 4, which you can see here, the Roman numeral 4, that's going to stay on top. All right. What's the next hashtag? Inheritors. Oh, this is a good one. So remember those people with the hats? Like the ladies with the umbrellas and the rumpled sweaters, and the guys with the matching, like, I don't know if they were called derby hats or what these hats were called, but it's almost like they were stock issued. Like, like extras on a movie set, like someone makes sure they're all wearing like exactly the same clothes. Like if you look at these World's Fairs, they're all wearing like the same straw hat. There's like 1,000 people in the shot, and they're all wearing the same straw hat. And then the women all have like the same umbrella. Is that the style of the time? And it just looks insane now. Is there any style now that would be that consistent? I think there are, but at the same time, what other options are there for all these people like looking the same? Maybe they all dress the same, or maybe it's camera trickery. And this can go a few different ways. One, you could think, well, there were early cameras and they were doing early camera trickery. Or you can think, some people, I think Elon Musk is one of them, they think of simulation theory. So in simulation theory, then someone would just throw in a bunch of NPCs with the same hat. That's another theory. Or you could have theory that all this technology has always existed, and they just kind of wipe the slate clean every once in a while so they can spend another 80 years moving you through the technology arc and selling you the stuff, but you're none the wiser because you're not from one of those families that owns all those companies that have all that technology. And, they're just going to reboot and go back to TVs and gas cars. And, and then 50 years later, they'll have electric cars and iPhones, because this is just the cycle. And, they're just repeating this cycle over and over. I'm just giving you like the craziest possible answers for these people in derby hats. The normal answer could be they were selling derby hats at the World's Fair and everybody bought them. I don't know. It could be like simple, could be crazy. All right, let's go back to the puzzle for a second. So this piece that I'm putting in, first of all, it has nowhere to receive these toothpicks. So this piece has toothpicks going through it, but this piece doesn't have holes for toothpicks. But that's fine because it's not going in far enough to reach them anyway. And the instructions don't really say how far to put this in. In fact, they seem to be showing doing this twice. No, there's a little. They're doing it twice, but the second time the piece in the middle is not 369, it's 371. But in neither case do they show how deep it's supposed to go in. All right, so here they show, okay, going a little bit forward, they do show it in there, and it's like the toothpicks are sticking out. So I think what I'm supposed to do is push this piece all the way down, and then these toothpicks are going to stick out this end. I think that's what they want. So let's give that a shot. Should have waxed this piece. I'll do it on the next one. All right. So, any more hashtags there? Oh, reboot. Yeah, I kind of folded that one in. Oh, the inheritors, I don't think I really explained. I don't think it's been explained to me well enough. I guess inheritors is this idea that somebody previously built those structures and then someone else just inherited them. But what I don't get is where those inheritors came from, where there were like extra people somewhere and they just said, yeah, we'll take those buildings. Or maybe these were like homeless people somewhere and someone gave them derby hats so they wouldn't look homeless in pictures. Yeah, the inheritors thing doesn't make sense to me. I don't get who those inheritors are, where they came from. Maybe someone else has a better theory on that. I don't really know the answer. So one of the not proofs, that's not a good word. One of the things that people mention is doors and windows that are underground. So, for example, there'll be a building that is currently being used, and sometimes they're like important buildings, like, City Hall, like government buildings, and they'll say like, okay, here's this City Hall, look how fancy this building is. Oh, there's another one, it's like, why do these City Hall buildings look the same like all around the world? I don't know that that's even true, but that's something that people say. But they'll look at those buildings and they'll say like, why are there doors underground? Like there's doors that can't be opened because that level is underground and it's covered with mud. Not mud. At this point, it's like ground, earth, whatever you want to call it. But the reason why they call it mud in the theory is that how did it get there? Like if it became liquefied and fused with water at some point, then it could end up like surrounding a building. Whereas if it never went to the mud form, then you need like an excavator to bury the building, and nobody thinks that happened. Nobody came up with that theory yet. So they assume that the mud like slid, the earth slid over the building as mud and then sort of dried out and stayed there. That's the theory. And there's incubators. In some of the videos, they show incubators. And I think these are, again, these World's Fair videos. And they'll show, like, babies in incubators. And people are like, why are there incubators like 100 years ago? Like, whose babies are these? Like, who's sending babies to the World's Fair in incubators? Because there wasn't, like, one of them. There was, like, a lot of them. And it was like, here's your baby incubators. Like, where did these babies come from? And I don't know, I haven't read an answer. So that's another one you could theorize. Like, Were they just trying to sell like incubators, or like where did these babies come from? Were these like Benjamin Buttons? Was this like, did these people survive the reboot and now their DNA is put into a new baby and it's being incubated? Like I don't know. Come up with as crazy theory as you want. All we really know for a fact is there's pictures of from 150 years ago with a bunch of incubators. And again, you could go with the theory that it's just Photoshop, ancient Photoshop. But if it is, they were pretty good at Photoshop back then. You know what? I think I got to wax these pieces this time because last time they were a pain in the neck to get them in. So let's wax them this time. I feel like I'm giving all these recommendations to go and search all these other videos. I probably should have had like at least a slideshow ready to talk about this topic. Next time, maybe I'll do this topic again some other time when I've got some slides ready. All right, let's get this piece in. All right, I got it. So I'm not really sure what we're doing here, but I've got them. And then next, we need to add like this piece, but now we need to use the small size, these like small toothpicks, and more 370s. So we've got more 370s. Here's 2 more 370s. So I'll just going to add both of them. I'm just going to assume, yeah, that we're going to do that twice. Actually, we don't do it twice. I'm going back to 701. All right, so... Oh, no, you do it twice. All right. I'll just show you here. See the ×2 there in the upper right? That means do it twice. So we're going to take these 2 pieces, and we're going to add these 2 pieces and these 2 pieces, and they each get 2 toothpicks. That's what we're doing now. All right. The problem with a lot of this stuff is usually the fun way to search something is to do like an image search and like look and see what comes up. But nowadays, anytime there's like a good conspiracy theory or just, alternative history theory, for some reason Google makes it unsearchable. So like if you did want to search, like let's say you go to Google and search either Tartaria or mud flood, they won't show you any of this stuff. They're like intentionally making the internet not fun. It's a new thing. I don't know how long it's been going on for. They tell you like that it's for politics reasons, like misinformation. Well, we know that's not the reason because first of all, they're doing it opposite. Like they suppressed the laptop when really it wasn't misinformation. And they suppressed like COVID theories that really weren't misinformation. So we know it's not about misinformation that they're trying to stop. But then they will stop any of this alternative history stuff. Like you try to search. I mean, what do they care if you're trying to search there? I'm not saying that there's anything to this theory or not. I'm just saying, like, why does Google care? Like, if I want to search mud flood, like, why is Google trying to stop me? Like, what do they care? Like, how does this affect their business in any way? And you probably could go a lot of different, theories on that. Who is Google? Who do they work for? What is their responsibility? Who do they answer to? Don't they go to the White House a lot and like talk to them? What are they talking to them about? I don't know. It really boggles my mind because it's not just this theory, it's like any fun theory. It's like the week after you hear about it, it becomes unsearchable. Like there was a guy once had a video that's saying like mountains were really trees. And I'm not saying that anyone believed him, but it was a fun video. You know, and it's like as soon as people watch this video, it's blocked. Like they don't block, you know how much like illegal, I don't even want to say what it is, but the like illegal type of videos and images on the internet. And sometimes there's specific people targeted in those videos that people haven't given their permission. They like complain to the social media company to take it down, and they don't. So they don't take down this like horrible stuff that's not victimless, and the victim is contacting the social media company and say take it down, and they don't take that down. But they take down some guy's theory about mountains actually being trees, or that some country called Tartar built a bunch of buildings that still stand today. Oh, I forgot one of the interesting thing about those buildings. So you know how I said they go deep underground because like I guess the ground was lower when they were built? So the other theory, there's actually a couple of them. One is that the buildings that are gone, it's only the above ground part that's gone. So that they still could be active buildings underground. And like there's a video of a guy with this radar over next to a what is believed to be a grave site, and it's showing all these people walking around and even biking around and like jogging around. And why is a grave site showing people doing all these like active things? Like it doesn't make sense unless there's something under there. Like, I don't know, maybe some of these structures are under there. But then who would be in there? I have no idea. It sounds crazier and crazier. But some of these buildings, they still exist. Like I believe how you heard that Epstein guy had a building in Manhattan. Well, I believe his building was one of those buildings, those like ancient, those deep underground buildings. And some of the old post offices are, including ones that like Trump owned. All right, I need to concentrate for a second on this. All right. So I believe it's like, yeah, we have to take this piece, and this piece, and put them all together. Maybe that's like easier than it sounds, but I just want to make sure I got that right. Okay, I think I got that right. So anyway, apparently Trump and Epstein both were buying these buildings, like exactly these buildings from this conspiracy theory. These like the buildings that were in the World's Fair. You know, there was like 100 buildings in a World's Fair video from 100 or photography from 150 years ago, and we're told that most of the buildings were torn down, but the few that are still visible above ground. So we were told that they're like wood and they're torn down, but the few that were visible above ground, they still exist and they're made of stone. And like Epstein's building was one of them, and a couple of Trump's buildings are on the list. And it's like, why are these billionaires collecting the buildings from this conspiracy theory? Like what? I'm calling it conspiracy theory because that's like a buzzword, but really it's just like, you know, it's like an Ancient Aliens, Graham Hancock type of theory. I haven't been watching Ancient Aliens lately. Maybe they've covered this, but it's like, I don't know if they covered it. I don't know if they mentioned that Epstein's building was one of the buildings and that the Trump post office and some other Trump buildings were on this list. So, I mean, you don't even need a list. They're usually like recognizable when you look at them. Another thing they'll show in the pictures is there'll be these ancient buildings, and then they'll have these like cheap wooden signs. There'll be these like ancient stone buildings with these cheap wooden like signs on them because, you know, someone's now rented it out and made a business. So that's like Another telltale sign. All right. Getting back to the instructions, we now have to clip 4 toothpicks in half. That makes 8 halves, right? Yeah, 8 halves, but they're showing 2 tires being put together, and that requires 10 halves. 10 halves of toothpicks, yeah. I don't know why they show 4 being cut. You actually have to cut 5. Oh, they do show 5. I just counted badly. I think I was thrown off because there was a 4 right next to the toothpicks, but it's 5 toothpicks. That means 10 halves, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tire pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tire pieces. All right, so we're adding 20 pieces. So this is going to go from 702 to 722. All right, and first thing we got to do is cut 5 toothpicks in half. So we've got more time to talk about this theory. Now, even though we started off by saying the theory is not true, let's think for a second if it were true. What would it mean? So by true, they're saying there would be like basically a earth-wide civilization that was doing construction on all the different continents in a similar style. And nowadays, nobody references those people. Like, they were called Tartars, and nobody's claiming to be those people now. So, let's imagine a sort of decision tree. We're going to figure out who these are. The first 2 branches would be somebody erased them from history, and they erased themselves from history. Because I think a lot of these theories, they start off with, who erased them from history? And I'm thinking, I know it's just a theory. I'm not saying it's true. But what I'm thinking is if they had the upper hand, meaning they were building on all the continents and they had, I forgot to mention, they also had like Tesla tech. Their buildings have these things at the top that create free energy and distribute it and things like that. So they had like free electricity, and I'm sure if it was electricity, it was also data networks. So let's say these people had the upper hand, and they had so much so that they built their buildings everywhere. Now that means 2 things. It means first, they were able to build their buildings everywhere without anyone stopping them. So they were kind of, a force. But then also those buildings had technology in them, communications and electronic, and they could house a lot of people. And so how much more powerful was the society after they built the buildings? So they were powerful enough to get them built, but then they were functional. So how much more powerful did they become? Basically, my point I'm getting at is I think the most likely culprit of who erased them from history, like if you're going to say the question, who erased the Tartars from history, I think the most likely answer would be the Tartars. They made a decision, and then from there, now it's like, now you've really got a conspiracy. Now it's like the movie They Live. If you're familiar with that movie where he puts on the glasses and he sees the people. I'm not suggesting that they're aliens, but the point is someone's in charge, but you're not supposed to know. Or maybe not in charge is not the right word. Someone is pulling the strings. What's the right word here? What am I looking for here? Someone is living, and it's not you. I think that's the tagline from that movie. It's like, they live, you sleep, or something like that. So, yeah. I think the most likely people to have removed them from history, again, not saying any of this ever happened, but if you're going to look into this theory and you're going to say, well, who removed them? I think the first people you got to look at is they removed themselves. They hid themselves. So why would they hide themselves? That's a good question, right? Oh, what though? All right. I'm going to leave that theory. I'm going to go to a different theory. What if the mud flood was a reboot and they really are gone, but so was everyone else too? I'm building a totally different theory here. And what if the inheritors were... Okay. Let's say there were multiple Earths. Well, that's too confusing. Let's not say multiple Earths. Let's say there were multiple land masses with humans on them. And one of those land masses, this works really good in the flat Earth theory. The flat Earth theory, the Earth is in the middle of, like Antarctica is like a bathtub. So in that case, let's say you had like 20 bathtubs and Earth was in one of them and Earth 2 was in another and Earth 3 was in another. Then you could mud flood one of them, one of those Earths, and that basically gets rid of all the people there. And then you could bring in some extra people from some other place who you wanted to reward. Those would be the inheritors in that scenario. You can go crazy with this theory. I mean, you can go like so many directions. But that's not what the YouTubers do. They tend to pick one story and then they try to reinforce and prove like that first theory that they thought up. They try to like pick selective evidence and make you think that it's true. I mean, why are you in the alternative game? Because like that's what the big guys do. You might, if that's the type of personality you have, you might as well work with the big guys because that's how they do business. I think if you're going to be an alternative theorist, you have to consider a lot of different options. You can't just like say, this is what happened. You have to keep thinking of all the things that might have happened. And then eventually you'll kind of get somewhere. And again, the somewhere could be very boring. It could be like, well, they made these stone houses and then they decided like it's cheaper to make wood houses. So they stopped making the stone houses. Like whoever, could be really in like, the queen lives in the castle, I mean, nobody's forcing her into a wood house. Oh, the queen died. Well, the king, currently the king, he lives in a stone castle. No one's like forcing him to live in a wooden structure. So it's not that we all live in wood structures now. It's just that it's not that everybody lives in them. It's that we do. But there's some other people that don't. By the way, these tires are different than the first set of tires. So the first set of tires, we just kind of stacked them all up. These ones, we're adding this piece, like this. That's the second piece. It's this piece that we were like building. I think we're going to add it like sort of facing out. I assume these are going to be the powered tires. You know how the vehicle's going to move when we're done? I think those are the tires that are going to somehow be involved with the movement. Let's see. Let's put them together and see what we get. Because I got all the pieces out now. Nobody's commented. Let me just double check. Maybe I'm not seeing it from this screen. I thought people would have questions about this topic. I probably didn't do a good job. I think I'm going to revisit this topic another night when I've got supporting pictures to put on the screen. Not that I'm trying to convince you, but just to try to make it an interesting conversation. All right, now, to put this together. All right, these pieces are different. One of them's 369 and one's 370. The only problem is, at this point, I don't remember which one's which. I should have kept them like to the left of each other, like 369 on one side, 371 on the other, because they have these numbers like back right and back left. The only problem is, if you look in here, it doesn't say, like, even though one of these was 369 and one was 371, when you look at the part of the instructions where I put them together, they don't distinguish them. So it's 364, 72, 63, whatever, and then 72, 60, yeah. So it's the same tires. It's the same pieces getting put together, but one tire is designated back right and the other is designated back left. And I'm not sure what's the difference between those two. I see that this piece, like this piece, I see that it's pointing this way on the back left and it's pointing this way on the back right. I don't know if that's all there is to it. If you go back when we were building them, one was 369 and one was 371. But when we're putting them together, there's no indication of which one to use. So the only thing I have to go by is this little like line in the piece. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do one of them with it facing this way and one of it with it facing that way. I don't know if it's really going to make a difference, but we got to try something. All right, so let's get our 5 toothpicks in there. All right. So anyone have their own theory yet? I guess you're not going to have a theory yet. How about a question on those mud flood structures? I'll tell you what I have a question is from the theorists making the videos. Why do they say that they look the same all around the planet when they don't? They'll like show these structures and they'll clearly look different, but they'll say that they all look the same. There are certain ones that look the same, like for example those government buildings, but they look the same like they're all based on, like, I don't know if it's Greek and Roman, but you know that like the columns and the stone, that type of look. Like, so if you say, yeah, they all made their capitals look like ancient Rome, I'm not sure that qualifies as a conspiracy. That's more like a classic look for making a Capitol building. But again, it is interesting because they'll be like everywhere. There'll be like a small town will have it, and you'll think, well, when did this small town ever have the resources to like build this building? But maybe they just make it look right. Maybe it's a house of cards, but from the outside it looks like some important building. I don't know. I realize I'm like all over the place this episode because I don't know myself. I don't really know what I think about this mud flood theory. I'll tell you, it's interesting, especially when they start adding to the theory. I'm trying to think what's another thing that they add sometimes. The power source. We didn't talk about that much. So it's like at the top of the building, there'll be like something that looks like a weather vane. And maybe it'll be like a weather vane with like a magic lantern below it, or one of those, like, the Russian buildings with those like teapots on the top. I don't know what you call them, but they look like lamps maybe. But then outside of them is coming like a weather vane or something like that. So it'll be like at the top of the building, there'll be a steeple, and then there'll be like some like pepper-shaped thing, and then there'll be like a line, and that line like a pole, and then that pole will have like a cross on it or a double cross, and that's starting to sound and look like a religious structure. But then if you look at that thing, you'll see it accumulates energy. Like some static electricity or something is like building at that top point, and it'll build to the point that it becomes visible. And even like it has a color to it. It'll look like a blue flame or like not really a flame, like ball lightning or something like that. It'll look like some sort of blue ball of electricity. I know that sounds ridiculous what I just said. But yeah, it'll be like some type of static electricity, ball around the top of that tower. So that's another thing. Crazy thing about them. It's tough to do any of these theories. I know that we call them alternative history, but it's tough to do them without them also being conspiracy theories, because there'll always be like counter evidence. Like you'll have seen like one of these buildings that'll be on this list, you'll maybe see someone setting the cornerstone. There'll be like a famous picture of the person setting the cornerstone. But sometimes it's almost too much. Like it'll be like, for every theory that you hear, you also heard when you were a kid the evidence why it's not true. And then you start to think, well, how is it that exactly the information you needed to debunk a theory that you were going to hear 50 years later, you were given that information as a kid? Like, here's the person setting the stone on this building. Like, why did I need to see the first stone of that building be set? So, because 45 years later, I'm going to hear a theory that building has several underground layers that are covered in mud, but now I shouldn't believe it because I've seen a picture of the first stone being set. It kind of reminds me of the flat earth theory, when it's like all the evidence you collect at sea level like looks flat, but then it's like, oh, but right before you were born, there's people walked on the moon, and here's some pictures of it, so the earth can't be flat. Like, why is it like, why is it that like everything that has this intuitive feel to it that seems like you want to investigate it, when you hear about it, 50 years later on the internet, it turns out, oh, when you were in second grade, you heard the counter argument. Like, how much stuff was I taught in second grade? How did it all manage to line up with like disproving everything that's now available on the internet as alternative history? It makes me wish that I would like stumble across some 18th century encyclopedia at a garage sale, because that's what I really want to read. I want to read like what the people were thinking back then, because I feel like I'm not getting an accurate representation of that now. Like, I'm not saying that the conspiracies are right or wrong. I just want to hear what people were saying at that time in that place, rather than like the recap that I'm getting from some historian. I just broke this toothpick. I got to cut another one. The recap that I'm getting from some historian like 50 years later, like I don't know, maybe that recap's right, but if I go back and read the book from the 17th century, then I can find out for sure. there's got to be ways to figure it out and determine it without going back to those sources. Or maybe I should go back to those sources. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound like a bad idea. Anyway, would take some effort. I'm just like sitting at a desk thinking out loud while I'm putting a puzzle together, so I'm not really in a position to go find an encyclopedia from 300 years ago or whatever. It would be interesting, though, if somebody has one. Let us know what it says. Could be interesting. Is there a difference to the order in the BL, the back left versus the back right? 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 359, 364. But 364 and 359, they look exactly the same. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be something wrong with these tires, but I don't really get what's different about these. Like this little ring, is that going to be the difference? Because one's 359 and one's 364. Is that going to determine what's the back left and what's the back right? Maybe. But that's the only piece that changes. So we'll figure it out when it's time to put the piece either back left or back right. We'll find out then, whichever way it fits. Right now, I can't tell the difference between these two pieces. But maybe at the time when we attach them, there'll be something like visible. You know, it's actually tougher than I thought to present the conspiracy theory because so much of the value, so much of the entertainment value of it is when you're hearing something for the first time. And it's not easy, like once you've already heard it and you're like repeating it, it's like it doesn't have the same kick, but maybe it does to the person hearing it for the first time. So I don't really know. There's also like, do you have to believe it? Because I don't. So, you know, it's probably, you probably do a better job selling it when you believe it. I do on some of them, but not this one. I just like, I believe that there could be some buildings that were left over from something else. But I don't believe like everything that's surrounding this story, that it's Tartars and that they were dividing it up at the World's Fairs and that everyone was wearing hats and they got this stuff from somewhere else. They inherited it. No, I mean, okay, where'd these people come from? See, I don't really buy the theory because I don't even understand the theory. Like, that's the first step in making a theory sellable, is make it understandable. All right, we made these two tires. So that's the end of page, what are we up to? Page 54. All right, so we're up to page 55 now. I did a terrible job of presenting those mud floods. So I'm going to change the title in this video. Forget we ever talk about it. But next time we talk about it, I'm going to have in this window, you see this like window here in the upper right where I have the instructions. I'm going to have a slideshow prepared to play. So I'll toggle between showing the instructions, but then when I go to building, I'll show a slideshow of the Tartaria. And that'll look good. Oh, by the way, I tightened up the green screen. Well, I'm still unclear on how to fit it, but it's like, I don't know. It looks, I don't know. It doesn't look perfect, but I worked on it a little bit and at least it fits. But I have all this like, hey, where is this? Okay, there it is. It was below it. Wow. Okay, the microphone was actually below the screen. I thought it would be right in front of my face. So that was below, but then I've got the close-up camera here and camera one here. So it's still a little busy here, but anyway, there I am. So I'll see you tomorrow. We're not going to do Tartars tomorrow. We're just going to do the puzzle. Okay, so see you tomorrow. Good night.